I never imagined being here, and I didn't know if I could do it or not, but I couldn't not do it. It was sort of a no choice thing. And after I got here, I found that it gave me a purpose, and it probably saved my sanity because I didn't have time to dwell on things. But
Senator Burks, Charlotte, you feel like family to us. I think to the all the folks in the Upper Cumberland. This is such a real treat because you have served such a strong bit of service in the Senate. I mean, you've been there since '98, serving the 15th Senatorial District. Sort of known as the Upper Cumberland, I guess. So tell us about that experience, about serving, and what do you want to be known for?
Well, I have enjoyed it, and of course the district's changed somewhat, but like Clay County's not my district anymore, Macon, Trousdale, and Pickett County are not in my district anymore, but I still think about them, because they are part of the Upper Cumberland. And anymore we have to work as a region. We can't work as an individual county anymore, or an individual 5 counties. We've got to work, and anything that any of those counties get benefits the entire Upper Cumberland. And we have, we're struggling for jobs now. There's a lot of unemployment, a lot of poverty, and we have a terrible drug problem, prescription drug problem in our area. And there's lots of bills down here this year to try to address some of that. But I think the economy, if we had, something for those people to look forward to every day, that we wouldn't have near as much of a problem.
Right.
Well, the Upper Cumberland has so much to offer. I've always called it God's country,
right?
Because we have so much natural beauty, and I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to locate there,
Right.
But I guess that's a personal preference. But if we could just get it out there and get it known, and that's what we've been trying to work on. Tourism is doing a good job now, and of course, with the Highlands, I think that is going to help our area.
It's very strong in economic development. I know you've been active in that.
Oh, yes.
Education.
And education, and I guess the things that affect everybody's everyday life. Of course, I'm domestic violence. I have worked a lot on domestic violence, and mental illness, and developmental disabilities, and children's issues. Those are the things that I have focused on. Of course, I've served on Commerce Committee, and I've tried to help our small business community and get our state into a position where we can attract jobs. But I guess my heart lies with my children's issues and the mental health and developmental disabilities, and I guess the things that there's not a big loud voice for here.
Right.
And it seems like when we have cuts, those are the places that get cuts, and we hardly ever give them a boost, with an influx of money, and it's so needed.
Right. You're soft-spoken, you're kind, you have really served with integrity and dignity. You have great respect on both sides of the aisle. You have great respect. And I think it rings true that you do give voice to those who often are voiceless.
Well, I've tried. It's hard sometimes with our budget problems, but you've still got to keep keep that out there, and we've made some strides. We have a great commissioner of children's services now, and if they'll just give him time, he will make a difference.
All right. That's important. Time is important.
Yes, but you can't fix something overnight. There's just so many problems to fix. And of course, I didn't mention education. I've served on the education committee ever since I've been here, and of course I am, that too. But that kind of goes with children's issues, I think.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. And I know you've been a champion there. You started your senatorial career in a really horrific time in your life. The Senator Tommy Burks was tragically assassinated by his opponent in that particular race. You won, I believe, the only write-in campaign, receiving 95% of the vote to become the senator. And that had to be such a challenge in your personal life as well as carrying on his legacy. I'm sure you walked his senatorial walk every day.
Well, he kind of, he'd come home and, we talked, and I pretty much knew everybody's personality down here because he talked about them, and he talked about the issues, and I knew about that, but, I never imagined being here, and I didn't know if I could do it or not, but I couldn't not do it. It was sort of a no choice thing. And after I got here, I found that it gave me a purpose. And it probably saved my sanity because I didn't have time to dwell on things. But it was a very difficult time, and but I think it helped me through and the support of people in all over the state and even out of the state, but my local people. When I guess it kind of almost makes me emotional, but the day of his funeral, when everybody was lined the streets, it just made you so incredibly proud, even though, of the tragedy, but, to know that he made that impact on people's lives.
Oh, he made a huge impact. He was so significant, as you have been, and so many of our legislative supporters have been about public broadcasting in the state. And he did so much for so many in the region. People did just love him. But he would come home and farm, just like you would come home and farm, right?
Oh, yeah. And we worked together, and that was too hard because he knew when to do everything, and of course, every morning he'd tell me what to do that day. Yeah. And I done it.
On the farm?
Yeah, and it was hard to know, well, when do I do this, when do I, and I had to, kind of go back and think, well, when do I work my cows, when do I mow hay? There's certain times of year you do certain things, and I just always relied on him to tell me when to do it. And so too. But being here, I said if I started, I'll finish it. So I didn't. And after I was here a while, I thought, well, maybe I can make a difference. And I got along with my peers pretty good. And, and they were so kind and good to me and helped me in every way they could. And made lots of friends, and I'll miss the people when I quit.
Well, I was going to ask you that. In this, you're retiring this year, and what will you miss about this work?
Well, I guess just the not knowing, what's going on, and not be, when you hear something, you think, well, I might be able to make a difference with that, or I might be able to fix it, or we might change this law or this law, and not being able to do that, because when you're always thinking of that, when you're talking to people, when people call you with a problem, you're always thinking, well, is there something we could do to change that would make it better? And I guess I'll miss that, not being able to have an input in things. But I'll miss the people. The staff down here they're just so sweet, and they just bend over backwards to try to help. And of course, I'll miss the other senators. There's so many of them gone that I started out with already.
So the Burks family, you've occupied this Senate seat for over 40 years, right?
44 this year.
So
Yeah.
that is multiple decades of service. And you really do have a servant's heart. I know you're a strong person of faith. How do you see that playing into your role, not just as a senator, but in your everyday life?
Well, I've always thought, the decisions you make, you have to live with. And there's lots of hard decisions you have to make, because everything is not just black and white. You can't just say this way and this way. You've got to think of what it will do. You do one good thing for one sector, and it affects the others. So you have to weigh those two. And I said, as long as I can go home and sleep good at night, I feel like I've made the right choices. And I've not had any problems so far.
Well, that's good. That's good news. Let's talk individually about some of the things that you really have sort of championed, like domestic violence, victims' rights. Why did you sort of go in that path? Obviously being a victim of violence.
Well, Tommy did the Victims' Bill of Rights, and at that time he'd never thought about his family being a victim. And I've always continued that and worked on the implementation of that, because that passed the year that he got killed, and so we had to put all the acts in code, and so I worked. That was the first thing I did. So that was, that kept me busy, and then domestic violence. He'd always worked with domestic violence, and those are the issues that were. I pretty much followed the things that he had done, and because he talked about those, and they were important to, they should be important to everybody, those things. And he served on education committee too, and of course my sister-in-laws are teachers, and it's just kind of ingrained in the family. And
methamphetamine is something that really plagued our region, continues. You just mentioned prescription drugs. In the documentary that Todd Gerald did, Crank, Darkness on the Edge of Town, you were a featured player in that. In fact, we still get comments from people all across the country saying, I love that Senator Burks.
Oh, how sweet.
Well, and it's true. So why did you pick that? You made a big difference in that war.
So it was such a problem, and it's just like the prescription drugs are now, and it's still methamphetamine. I mean, we're still working on that, and it affects so many facets of our Upper Cumberland area. I mean, it affects our economic growth because of the problem we have, and it affects so many families. I mean, you think, oh, well, just let them go, They don't need any help. Well, their families do. And they do too. And I worked on that for, I guess, 3 years before we got to the task force. And when my bill was in committee the third year, Senator Cohen, that's in Congress now, he asked for a task force to study it, and that's how the governor's task force was formed. And I served on that, and so did Representative Curtis from Upper Cumberland. And from that, we passed that first law. Well, it worked good for a while, and then now it's back. And we wanted to do the prescription drug, but there's, people, and I don't really understand. I guess it's because it hasn't touched their lives, but it is an inconvenience. and for people. But if they could see the families that are destroyed by it, I think they would look at it a little differently.
Right. Now, in education, what challenges do you see for children, for families?
Well, with the governor's proposal, I mean, how can you be against that, you know? But I think it's going to affect our four-year institutions, and I'm not sure, and I don't want to be negative or positive because it sounds like such a wonderful thing.
For students to be able to go to community.
Yes, to go to the two-year institutions for free. But I don't know how that'll impact the four-year institutions and the quality of, you know, if you downsize a university, that's a drastic effect. And I worry about tech because that's in my Upper Cumberland area. And but we don't know the details yet, and there may be some, you know, till I see that I can't really make a real decision on it. But it could be far-reaching for our young people. And our young people, I guess if we could educate the parents, we might have if we could, you know, get the parents to have more interest in their children. That's kind of the key, but there's so many single parents now, and they're just, you know, they're stretched. And they're stretched, and they're stressed. And so we have to work with what we have, and I think we've done some things that in education that I haven't agreed with.
Right.
And we've done some really good things. The idea of Common Core, you know, we do want our children to have the same opportunities that they do in other states. We want them to be challenged and their knowledge be equal to other states. But there are issues that, you know, that when you tell a teacher how to teach, but I talked with some of the superintendents, and they say, well, if you don't have a model, then you lose. And so I don't know how that'll come out. There's some on our committee that are against it, some are for it, and I guess we'll have to discuss and discuss. And I don't know how it'll come out, but right. As far as the concept of it, it's great. The details are and that's what always muddies the water.
That's right, that's right.
The devil's in the details, so.
You know, I want to talk a little bit about you. You grew up in Jackson County.
Right.
What was that like growing up in rural Tennessee?
Well, I thought it was wonderful. You know, I had a wonderful childhood. I had a good mom and daddy, and my dad worked hard. My dad was a tenant farmer on the Gore farm. Judge Gore owns a farm, and my brother's recently bought our old home place, so I get to go back, and it's so fun to go visit him. But I went to Woodrow School. It's a one-room schoolhouse, and we didn't have any water in the school, and we did have electricity in the school, but where I grew up, I didn't have any. We had no running water and no electricity.
Wow.
So not many people my age, I guess, says that anymore, but I was happy. At school, everybody was about the same, you know. We were poor, but everybody else was too, so we didn't know it. We didn't know that we were, but when I was 10, I guess, we moved to Michigan. My dad got a job up there, and we moved off the farm. And I was in the 6th grade. Of course, with all grades in one room, you had to be quiet. So you listened, and I had the most wonderful teacher, Miss Ela Chapman. She used to take us home with her and let us spend the night. And she'd take turns, and she'd take take us home with her and let us spend the night, maybe 2 or 3 girls at a time, you know. And but she was the most wonderful teacher. And so I graduated high school when I was 16. And because when I went to Michigan, I was in the 6th grade, and they tested me, and I did a little extra work in math and went right on through and never had any problem.
That's
so
great.
She was a great teacher.
That's awesome. That's right.
But I had 2 sisters and a brother that were at home then, and I had 3 older brothers. And 2 of them served in the military, and one of them, he worked on the farm too. And he kind of petted me. I was the baby of the bunch.
Oh, you were?
Yes,
Okay.
I was. I was the youngest. And
So how old were you when you moved back?
when I married Tommy.
Oh.
My grandmother lived close to him there in Cookville, and when I visited in the summer, I got to know him, and we bought a little house adjoining him just to have a home when my dad decided that he wanted to bring us back, but he never came back until he passed away.
Now, so did you really learn a lot about farming with Tommy?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But of course my dad too. I mean, you know, I know one time I went out with my brother and sister, they were chopping weeds, and I pulled up all my mom's beans because I thought they were weeds, and she got so upset.
Yeah,
because they got in trouble because they wasn't watching me.
That's great. So you're still a farmer?
Yeah, and I enjoy that. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding.
What kinds of things do you farm?
Well, I'm kind of downsized. We had hogs and grew tobacco. We grew 30 acres of tobacco. And I did that for about 5 years, I guess, after he passed. And it got harder to get help. And then they did the buyout. And we had never contracted any of our tobacco, so I didn't want to do that, so I took the buyout. And so I've not grown in it anymore. And we grew pumpkins and, well, just about anything to make a little extra. Because, you know, in farming you don't put all your eggs in one basket, because, you know, it depends on the weather so much that sometimes one thing fails and you've got the other one to rely on. But I've just got my cattle now, just about, and I intend to do some more things when I retire.
Well, what kinds of things? What kind of
Well,
things do you
I'd
want
like
to
to
do?
grow pumpkins again, and you know, grow some different things. And oh, there's so much that I've got to do. I've got to do some fencing. I've got to do lots of stuff.
Now, I know you're a great cook. Do you have other hobbies that you really like? Or?
Well, mostly just I love working outside. Most doing anything. I'm not much of a inside person.
And I know you're a mom and a grandma and a great-grandmother, right? So how important is family?
Oh, it's that's where it is. I mean, you know, that's the most important thing. Family comes first, always. And I've got all these great-grandbabies now, and they're so sweet. And my grandchildren are kind of growing up. I've still got 2 little ones. One's 6 and one's 3.
Wow.
So I've still got some little ones.
What are you looking forward to most in retirement, do you think?
I guess just not having to drive myself so hard, you know, because just like yesterday, I sold cattle, and I had to rush around and get them loaded, and all weekend I worked getting them up and that kind of thing. And if I hadn't been down here, I wouldn't have felt so pressed.
What do you think the greatest challenge is to a farmer like you and like others?
Well, you just got to have a lot of faith that it's going to, because so much of it depends on things that you have no control over.
Charlotte, just in the little bit of time we have left, is there anything you wish you could have accomplished that you didn't get to do, or you feel pretty satisfied?
Well, I feel good, but there's still some things children's issues, some of those things, and then, well, I pretty much tried to finish everything Tom had started, and the only thing that I wasn't able to accomplish is the elected school superintendent, which is very important to some of the people in the small counties. But it seems to have kind of worked itself out because they have started electing local people, and I think that has been the, I guess that's helped.
Maybe.
Yes, I think that's helped. But to bring an outsider in and put them over your school system, and if you've got a local person, they can relate to the families more, and I think that has really helped our area. Of course, it's still important to some, but I don't think it's as important as it was at one time in our area.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for everything that you've done. We love you tremendously, and we just wish you a wonderful retirement.
Well, thank you so much, and I have truly enjoyed serving people, and I look forward to doing some volunteer work. I might even come to Channel 22 and help.
We're going to hold you to it.
Okay.